Welcome to the Popcorn Junkies. This is our review of the American Chinese movie The Farewell, which was a favourite at the Sundance Film Festival. It's been released in America, it's just come out here in the UK. The only notable member of the cast is Awkwafina. I don't even know if that's how you correctly pronounce her name, but it's how it's written, so that's how I'm going to say it. Mm-hmm. So it stars Awkwafina, who we know from Ocean's 8, was it? Or Ocean's 11? Or Ocean's what?
8.
Ocean's 8, there you go. But also she had a small part in Crazy Rich Asians too. She was probably the best thing in Crazy Rich Asians. It's a story, very simple story, of a Chinese granddaughter or Chinese American granddaughter living in New York whose family hears that their grandmother, Nanny, has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. The thing is, well, what is the thing? They do things differently in China, don't they? Well, the Chinese community do things differently.
Yeah.
And so what did they decide to do?
Not tell her.
They decide not to tell Nai. So the whole family know that their nan has cancer.
Yeah.
And they all fly out to China to surround their nan and be with her. But none of them are going to tell her that that she's dying. And by all accounts, this is a Chinese thing. I love the way the film was originally titled with "This film is based on a
true lie."
True lie.
Well, it's just the thing that if you do tell somebody, then they'll live up to the expectation, which is that they'll die.
Well, that's always my thing. You see, and I thought so. The very fact of that at the beginning and going into this film, I knew that that's what it was about. I thought philosophically that's quite a rich thing.
It is.
It's quite a rich thing to think about.
I don't think it's just the Chinese either. I think
No.
quite a lot of cultures might think that.
Well, I think a lot of people would. I mean, that's why I would never be interested in these diagnostic kits that tell you what you're going to die of or when you're going to die. Or if I had a terrible diagnosis, I don't think I would want to know when I'm going to die, because I think you're right. I think you would time yourself out.
Yeah.
Awkwafina, as I say, is a girl who's struggling to make ends meet as a young professional in New York.
Yeah.
She's got a loving and supportive family, sort of lower middle class. Mm-hmm. They all fly out. And we have a sort of a film that does, I feel, everything that Crazy Rich Asians people were saying it did.
Yes, yeah,
and it should have done.
Yeah.
And it did, but in the most unsubtle of ways, i.e. this clash between America and China.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a very interesting film about the division between American life and Chinese life as an American Chinese person. So what were your thoughts going into this? Were you excited about seeing this or not?
I'd seen the trailers.
Yes.
Trailer about twice. I don't generally like film. This sounds ridiculously pat, but I don't usually like films about very old people, especially dying.
Oh.
No, but even when there was another film that came out where
I remember
two
the one
very
you
old
mean.
people in love, and I think one of them died. It doesn't interest me.
Right.
So I wasn't going with. I don't know the girl either.
Awkwafina.
Awkwafina. No. I was going with no expectations at all.
Yeah, I went in thinking I knew this was going to I knew it was a Sundance favourite, so I was expecting a real sort of American indie film, which is kind of what you get. It's directed by Lulu Wang. I don't think she's made much else. It's written by her too, and it's partly based on her own life. What I thought was quite a neat conceit is what the family decide to do is they decide to pretend that the youngest boy in the family is getting married.
Yeah.
As a ruse for them all heading out there, which of course their nan, who's dying, takes sort of under her arm like an American football and goes charging down the end of the pitch, booking everything in, booking up the, so they go through the whole wedding reception. And I thought that was great. I mean, I thought Awkwafina was good and is very interesting. I personally was absolutely blown away by Zhao Shuzhen, who was the granny.
Oh, okay.
I thought she was remarkable.
Yeah, I think you have to feel that I think to absolutely get the best out of the film. I didn't.
Oh, did you not?
No.
Why not?
I just thought she wasn't a very good actress.
Oh, did you?
Which is a dreadful thing to say, maybe, because it's key.
I mean, she's had plaudits for her performance. I mean, I tell you why. I tell you what I think might be difficult for this film is that we've been to China, and the Chinese way of life is incredibly different. I mean, obviously you've lived in Hong Kong too.
Yeah.
But it's so different that I think even American Chinese people, or people who are second generation have moved to America, struggle with how buttoned up culturally things are back at home in China.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought that the
Nan
carried that quite well. Well, they do have a very dark sense of humour. And I thought this whole film was one big long shaggy dog joke about not telling your nan she's dying.
Well, it was. That's the conversation that's going on around the table when the film opens, isn't it? And then what what's played out is that joke.
Yeah.
And also the line that was in the trailer of in China we say that if you've got cancer you're going to die. I mean, which is a hysterical line.
And I thought that was really laugh out loud in the trailer, and I was expecting to laugh in the film, but when they said it in the film, it hit me as a much more philosophical thought. Do you think maybe you're a bit ageist? Do you maybe you just don't like old people?
I might be.
I think the first half an hour of this film, it was labouring to find its rhythm.
Yeah.
I thought it was creaking around. I thought this film really kind of took off, or it never really takes off, but I thought this film got into its stride once we'd really established the ensemble cast of the family.
Yeah.
And I thought the ensemble cast of the family, I've never seen a family more beautifully drawn.
No.
Almost to the point that, to the detriment of Awkwafina's performance, I know she's getting all of the sort of adulation and all that kind of stuff, and she's probably going to be nominated for a Best Supporting Actress and all that. I don't think she necessarily merits that. I thought she was as brilliant as the others, but the others were as brilliant as her. I thought there were many scenes, right down to simple little scenes that I made a note to remember of, you know, when she goes into hospital, they're all in China and they're all maintaining this myth and lie that they get married. And she goes into hospital to get the test, and there's a really long, for quite a long time, held shot of them all coming up the stairs with umbrellas and awkwardly not knowing where they're going.
Yeah.
I thought the hubbub of chatter and connectivity and unity and how they all moved as a sort of amorphous whole as a family was beautifully observed. And I thought, in a sense, if you had to sort of home in on a performance, I thought the performance of family was one of the best I've seen in a film.
Yeah, best
I've
altogether.
Of a family, of an entire family, where you've got
Yeah.
that sense of the uncle who breaks down at when he's doing the speech,
two brothers are
and the
brilliant.
father who I thought was absolutely charming, and the mother who's much sterner, harsher, but at the same time, you know, that sort of rift between Awkwafina and her mum, which most daughters have with their mums. The son who was getting married, I thought was hysterical.
Who I started off not liking at all, and then by the end of the film,
about the drinking contest,
him.
that funny drinking contest scene. I mean, I thought that was hysterical. The best bits of this film were less about the story of maintaining the myth that they were pretending not to tell her, or pretending she was fine, and actually just watching them as a family function.
And that's absolutely true. And also the larger family, in the sense of the thing around the table where, is it the sister of the mother?
Oh,
the
yes.
one-upmanship of, well, you know, why... What are you doing in America?
That's a really good scene. I thought that scene was amazing. I was really curious to see how directly they were going to tackle the China-America thing, especially given the situation at the moment with Trump and all of the tariffs. And so we're in a trade war between America and China. And I thought that scene was really brave, actually, because it culturally it took on China in a critical way, and it took on America in a critical way. It wasn't over gloopy about America, and I thought it gave China an equivalence. It was sort of saying, look, just because you've got that in America, you know, this was a work of supreme sophistication compared to Crazy Rich Asians, and this was touching upon quite nuanced things, I thought. And so really the film just sort of rambled along, didn't it? It sort of bumbled along. Did it make you think about how we could adjust our attitudes to death?
Yeah, I mean, that's really why I'm bringing up that the grandmother was living in this sort of shared environment, just in the sense that, because at one point Awkwafina says to her grandmother, well, you know, you've always been shouting at this guy, why do you live with him? And she said, well, it's better a warm body, you know, than no person. Yes. And I thought, well, that's an interesting observation.
He was a great character. There's this guy that's just sort of keeps spilling stuff everywhere, doesn't he? I thought, see, those little details I thought were very nice. They were very beautifully observed and very sort of, I mean, sort of gently sort of presented, not over, you know, again, going back to Crazy, you know, in other films, in the hands of other directors, they're just thrown at you in such an obvious fashion. And it just made me reappraise. I was thinking, God, you know what? I think maybe we should adopt this attitude to terminal diagnosis. Why are we all obsessed in the West with knowing when it's going to end? Yeah.
Well, also, Awkwafina makes the point at one point, whether it's in the hospital or whether it's when they're all together at home, that in the States it would be illegal almost. I mean, we would not be able to do that. You have to tell the person.
And I thought all those moments where we were reminded of the cultural contrasts were very interesting. They really made me. Yeah, they really made me think. And I was like,
benign shadow. I thought that was great.
Yeah, could you find a benign shadow? Did you think when there's a moment where the Nan reads the notes and she looks at them and says, "I told you I was fine"? Yeah. Because they've managed the notes. Yeah. Did you not feel within her because there's a really curious moment, there's a deceit going on. So basically the family are just telling an enormous lie to Nan. Yeah. And yet we find out that the nan told the same lie to her partner.
Exactly.
So their grandfather.
Yeah.
If it was me, if I was the nan, and I knew I'd done it, I'd be thinking, you're all here and you're all lying to me.
Yeah.
I thought that was almost a sort of problem with their lie. I mean, I think I was expecting the script to at times be a bit funnier.
That's exactly what I was saying. Although, as you say, there were some very interesting sort of cultural references laid down very gently. I thought they were laid down too gently
That's
a bit.
true. That's
and in terms of what we got as a film as a whole, there weren't enough of those moments. I mean, I agree that the en masse scenes were delightful in a way.
Well, what about, I mean, for example, my favourite scene in the film was when they were all at the grandfather's grave.
Oh, yes!
And one of the guys, the uncle, or the father lights up a cigarette and offers it to the corpse, to the buried body. And this very serious conversation happens saying, no, don't give him a cigarette. And they're like, no, he gave up. And someone said, well, no, he didn't actually. He's dead. He's dead. And they're talking about whether they should give him a cigarette. I thought that was so charming. And I thought the dynamic between them, and then it cut out to a wide shot and they all kept bowing. And they were getting
so
dizzier.
Funny.
I thought that was really beautifully done.
I did too.
I think the strongest moments in this film were where the family of actors acting as a family were just playing it for. It was so true. It was so honest. It was such a real dynamic amongst them. I could have watched that for ages. I could have watched them moving from pillar to post more often. Watched them engaging with each other, going through doors. It was all the incidental shit that I was absolutely captivated by. And then as soon as we focused on the story. Both the story I felt ran aground a bit too early, and your point, which you kind of inferred before I went in, which is I think it could have been written more crisply and a bit funnier, a bit wittier.
And maybe it's unfair to compare the whole thing with Shoplifters, which in a way I was doing. Because the family are so different, and this family are very sort of gentle, like the people in America are the dad and the mother, and they're very
lovely,
sort of low key. And that works on one level, but it doesn't sort of, if you stretch it over the film, it sort of doesn't. And if you add that to the fact that I did find the old lady far too cute, sort of cute and gentle.
Too much like a Pixar animation, maybe?
Yeah, and even when she does a ha 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 thing, which,
that didn't work for me.
Not at all.
What did you think of the ending? Or what did you read from her going, ha, at the end, and the birds flying? Was that her death?
Oh, I didn't know. I don't know what that was. You mean, I don't know what that was.
Well, no, I mean, because I tell you, I thought what we were given there was she went, ha, like there was that sixth sense of she knew that was the moment she was going to die, because they've left China, they come back to New York, there's an assumption that she's going to die at some point, but we don't know when. And when she sort of looked up and went, ha, and the birds flew in China, I thought, that's the moment. Nana's dead.
Yeah.
What confused that for me was when they cut after the credits to the real director's Nan saying Nana is still here 6 years later. Yeah. And I thought they should have chosen to go one of the two ways. It's completely muddied it, because I read that as she's died, but there's the connection between them.
Well, I'd even almost forgotten that bit and took the end bit of after the credits as being, well, this is what the film's about.
Well, you see, I'd have been brutal if I was the director. I'd have pulled my Nan out of that sequence and just let the film end like that.
Yeah, and actually that's a much better ending.
I think so.
Yeah. I thought the girl, who I don't know at all from anything, I haven't seen her in anything, was good, and I didn't at the beginning.
Right.
Again, I liked her sort of almost, that thing of teenagers. She's a bit older than a teenager, but they're sort of slouching and they're
her physicality is good, isn't it?
Very good, and the way that she spoke to people, and also being sort of outraged, but with what they were doing, she was the only one that was. Yeah. But at the same time going along with it and sort of letting herself be. I thought her
relationship with her mum was very well drawn.
Yeah.
That tension between a mother and the daughter.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah, I mean, although I like lots of other people in the family, she was by far the strongest character, and because what they should have done, and I think what they meant to have, was the Nana and her being equal, and they weren't to me at all. And so, and I wish they had been, because then the film would have worked so much better. And if it had had a crisper, as you say, a crisper sort of script. And it was fine, it sort of just meandered along, but that was all it did. It seemed over long to me, and it's probably not, but that's because it did meander along. Yeah. And I mean, I can find all the Chinese stroke against America stuff fascinating on one level, having been there and observed them and their dark sense of humour and everything, but they didn't sort of they didn't play that for much either, really, in the end.
Right.
I was disappointed by it. Yeah.
Okay.
And shall I give it a score?
Yeah, absolutely.
I will give it 4.2.
4.2. Wait, I just. What justifies the 0.2? That's all I'm ever drawn
Awkwafina.
to. Yeah, I thought this was. I thought it was an amiable watch.
Amiable.
It was like it was comfortable. It just avoided boredom for me, and I think it avoided boredom, as I've said before, because I thought the family dynamic was just beautiful. I thought I so believed them all as a group and as a collective. I could have, as I said, watched more and more. I was more drawn to everything that was happening on the edges of the story, more than I was drawn to the actual story. I found the actual story, once I'd got past the initial sort of existential conundrum of would I want to know or not want to know, which in itself is quite fascinating, and then culturally, should we maybe adopt that? I was thinking all those things. You run out of steam with that after a while, and I didn't really care. And even the deceit with the nan after a while, once you bought into it, you bought into it. But I couldn't tire of watching them all interact. So I thought the wedding scene was really good. The grave scene was lovely. Just watching them hustle and bustle from place to place. I think Nadia would love it. The food. I mean, so much happens over food, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought all the observations of that were really nice. I think you're right. I think they did set out to really contrast America and China, and they kind of dropped the ball, I think. They started well, but right at the end, there was no real pulling it together or coming, not that you need to come to a conclusion, but I don't know. I found, in a weird way, Awkwafina's character more disconnected to her nan by the end of the film than I did at the beginning. I felt, I wanted there to be a growth or a build of intensity between them. Whereas almost when she came over to China and met her nan, I didn't feel they were actually that close. So then I found it almost a bit difficult to buy into how important Nana was to her.
The sort of bits that were supposed to show you how close they had been, which is very similar to our family, like her keep calling her grandchildren stupid, like
idiot.
I mean, it was very comparable. But I didn't feel it.
No,
I
I
felt like it was full.
Yeah, so I mean, I think a little bit like you, given all of the fanfare that this has had, given that it might well scrape in with with a nomination, certainly for Awkwafina, I do think it was too hesitant and it just needed a tighter script. I think maybe it would have been better if the director hadn't written it as well and it wasn't based on her own life story, to be honest. So I would give this probably 4.5.
Oh, so you're more or less...
Yeah, because I think the family side of it I really enjoyed that.
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.